Yes, here we are. Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining already. Hey, James, how are you doing? Welcome, Douglas. How are you? Hi, Alice. Happy Monday, everybody. Hey, Gwen and Beth, thank you so much for being back. Hi, James. Thank you so much for being here. Tish. Hi, Stephen. Welcome. Thank you so much. Hey, how is it all hanging? Nice. Hey, Betsy, welcome. How are you? Hey, everybody. Hi, Catherine. Hi, Deborah. Thank you so much for being here. Right, let me just put a little bit of order here because I'm literally all over the place right now. Let's center you. Welcome, John and Kathleen. Happy Monday, everyone. Hope you're doing really good. Right, let me bring up a few things on my computer, make sure that everything is working okay. Oh, and I'm so glad that this is working now. I had a couple of tantrums with the app earlier on our tour this afternoon. So I'm glad that things are at least working. Oh, look at me. I have rosy cheeks. The heating is definitely doing its thing. Oh, thank you, guys. You're honestly so kind. And thanks so much for putting up with the app earlier. Honestly, it's such a frustrating thing. And this day and age, it seems to happen more and more often. It's kind of hard to sort that out when it happens, but we managed to see some things, which is the important thing. I'm doing good, Virginia. I'm really tired, but it's all going okay, actually. Not too bad. I have another long day tomorrow, but like we say in Spanish, sarna con gusto no pica. Sarna is a type of illness that makes your scalp quite itchy. I can't remember ever the name. I can't remember if it's typhus or something like that. So the saying kind of goes, if you do something with gusto, even if it's something that could be irritating, it doesn't matter. So that's what we're doing today. Okay, and I'm actually in the green now. Hi, KG, welcome. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining. Well, welcome to this. This is gonna be the last review I do of my trip to Athens. I thought doing 2 was enough. At the end of the day, I'm mostly doing this so that people understand how the experience went, and in case you guys actually are planning on visiting Athens or certain parts of Greece, so you can get an honest opinion of what you may find there. So this is a very freestyle kind of session. You're all very welcome to ask questions. I'm gonna be sharing pictures in my computer. I uploaded everything that I took other than the short videos, but honestly, I took so many pictures that will be plenty, I think. Hey, Grace. Hey, Titi and Emily. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining. But that's pretty much the idea. Now, I'm also probably going to bring up Google Maps just so I can put a couple of things into perspective. Let's do that, because I think when you actually understand some of the areas that I've been to in Athens, things kind of make sense. Google Maps, come on. My internet is working. Excellent, brilliant. Hello. Oh, thank you so much, KG. You're very kind. Hi, Terry. Hi, Tina and Tivia. Welcome. How are you? Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for being here. Well, okay, so let's get started. Athens. Interesting time of my life, I must say. I would be lying if I said everything went according to plan. It most definitely didn't. it was honestly hit and miss in most cases. Hi, Joy. Hi, Katie and Dave. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you, Juan and Beth. You're very kind. It's honestly very generous of you. How did things go? Well, let me explain the premise and the plan that I had for Athens, what it actually ended up happening, and then I'll show you some of the pictures as well. So, hey, John, welcome. How are you doing? Long time no see. So I spent a whole month in Athens from the 2nd of February to the 2nd of March. Both my flights were relatively early, so, one day up and down. I stayed in an Airbnb, so I rented from a woman the whole flat. And I was quite in the city center, in the area of Kolonaki, which is actually quite accessible. And I'll show you in a moment what it was. The plan, or the reason why I was going to Athens, was because I had never been to Greece, so I wanted to do a little bit more of exploring and whatnot. As many of you also know, I'm looking to relocate back to Europe, so I'm looking for other potential places where, if not doing a permanent move, where I could explore 2 seasons of the year between the UK and another European country. And there was also the reason of being able to do different tours and different activities out there. Athens is the 7th largest city in the whole of Europe. I had never lived in a city like that. I wanted to understand from that perspective what tourism opportunities there were, what challenges, and what not. So it was a way of really killing too many birds with too very few stones. It was a way of improving my historical skills, my tour guiding skills, my potential living situation, and some holiday at the same time. It seemed like a great plan. Do you think so? Well, it turned out to be, like I said, very hit and miss. So my stay in Athens is essentially split in three periods. The first week was proper holiday. I was actually out there with James. Some of you may have been here on Saturday when James was talking, just because James wanted to give his perspective. Unfortunately, James is too busy preparing for gladiator season, so he can't be here today. I'm sorry. He's actually, on a complete tangent, he's actually going to Rome to fight in one of the biggest gladiatorial events next month. So he's doing all of that hard work, reenactor, powerlifting to get up there, but he has a couple of points that he has asked me to put across for you guys so that I give you that perspective too. Hey, John, Lynn, and Iwa, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining. Hey, Gloria, happy Monday. And hey, Hadrian, thank you so much for joining too. So, welcome, Polly. So while James was there, I thought it would be a good chance for me to do proper tourism, be the tourist rather than the tour guide, to give myself a chance to acquaint myself with the city. It's new, I've never been there, and it's very big. And also take some very deserved holiday. I hadn't had a proper holiday, guys, since the 10th of October. So it was a long time. And in case you didn't know, I had a very intense January. So I definitely needed that rest. Well, I actually had a very thorough plan for Athens. So I'll tell you what my plan was. The first day I arrived on my own, so I was just mostly settling in. James was arriving the following day. That day we were just going to do walking around, gather resources, know where the supermarket is, that type of stuff, get to know the city. On the second day, we were going to go to see the Acropolis and the rest of the archaeological sites. On the third day, we were going to go see some of the museums and some of the leftover sites because we thought we probably didn't have enough time to see them all. On the fourth day, we were going to be going to a different part of the city. We will see what happened then. We were going to go to Piraeus, to the port. On the fifth day, we had some more museum time. And on the sixth day, James had to go quite early. So we essentially just had time for something very short. Nothing big at all. Spoiler alert. The day after we both get to Athens, a snowstorm hits Europe. And we get this huge notification on our phones, literally. I thought the end of days was coming. Hey, Elizabeth, how are you doing? It's a really good thing, in theory. Everybody, I am not joking, Kathleen. I was genuinely shocked. Imagine this. We had been walking through the city for 10 hours, hardcore walking. We get home, we're dead on the sofa, whatnot. I am looking on Facebook, sending pictures to my mom, that type of stuff. And suddenly the whole of Greece gets the same alert to their phone. It didn't matter what you were doing at that moment. It was a red alert. It took over all of your screen and it came with sound. If your fire alarm is going in your house because your house is burning, whack, 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 whack. And it was all in Greek until you scrolled at the very bottom where there were a couple of lines in English. And I was like, oh my God, my phone had been hacked. That's what I thought. I was like, that's it. My tours are over. My life is finished. And at the same time, I hear James thinking, oh my God, what if Putin has invaded Greece? Honestly, we were terrified because we realized it wasn't just our phones. We could hear it from anyone in the street. And then when we finally scrolled down, it was a weather alert telling us that the following day, there was going to be 2 centimeters of snow in Athens. And I was like, 2 centimeters? I need an alert for 2 centimeters of snow? Okay, that's cool. I understand that maybe in Greece it doesn't snow as much as in the UK, but that seems a bit hardcore. Hi, Deborah. Hi, Jeff. Barb, how are you doing? Yes, KG, honestly, I was like, are you kidding me? Well, my landlady thankfully told me that day, if it snows, nothing will be working. Now, in my mind, probably stupidly, I thought if it snows, if you have this much snow or enough for your foot to go through it, nothing will work, because it happens in the UK too, right? You have problems with trains, with transport, anything. By the time we woke up the following day, everything had been melted. There was, yes, Tish, there was no trace of snow anywhere. And I was like, where is that snow? It wasn't until we got into the city and we got to see some of the mountains that obviously in the mountains we saw, oh yes, it has snowed there. But as a result, the town was a ghost town. Nothing was opened. Things were just so weird. It was, honestly, it kind of gave me pandemic vibes. I was like, they weren't joking. Nothing literally will be working. It was definitely not expected. Hey, Chelsea and Claudette, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining. Hi, Viola. Happy Monday. Hope you're having a good day. And yes, Hadrian, honestly, that was our reaction. We were like, okay, never mind. So that was the day where we were going to do some of the outdoor activities, some of the other sites, but we found them all closed. So we had no option but to go into the museums. And we had a super stupid situation in the Archaeological Museum. That is probably one of my biggest big red cross of the whole trip. We get to the Archaeological Museum, which has a fantastic archaeological collection. For those of you who know James, he's an ancient historian. He loves ancient Greece and Rome. Like, that's his PhD. And he had specific things he wanted to see there. So did I. Like a list, It's a huge museum as well. I'll show you in just a moment. It has actually several floors. So we go in there, and in Athens, there is actually not a pass for all the museums, okay? It's quite an interesting thing. There is lots of museums in Athens, by the way, really good museums, but because the majority of them are private collections, there is not this kind of big pass. So the Archaeological Museum cost us €6, which isn't a big ask for such a big collection. We go in, we start walking around, looking for those things that we wanted to see. And suddenly I start noticing that there is tape between this set of stairs and that set of stairs. That room is closed, no access, door closed, whatever. And we do a loop around the ground floor, and I'm like, but there is more. I can see that. And there is a stair there, and the plan of the museum here is telling me, oh, go to the second floor to do this, or to the first floor to do that. And I was like, how do we get there? We actually had to go to the front desk and ask, and they told us, oh, since it's snowing, we figured out people weren't going to come here, so we closed half of the museum. And we were like, and you didn't tell us? We paid for price, not knowing we were not going to be able to see some of the, items that we really wanted to. If we would have known that when we came in here, we would have come back tomorrow. We wouldn't have wasted, not wasted, because we still saw some really cool things, but we wouldn't have wasted our €6 now to not see what we actually wanted to see. It was such a disappointment, but it also gave us a very interesting perspective on how tourism and culture were being managed in there at the time. So it was, for James, it was really a hard blow. And for us, but for me particularly, because the section that I wanted to see was the vast majority of the Roman remains from Hadrian's stay in Athens. All of that wing was closed. They had a brand new exhibition. I had done research about it. I had my notes, everything. I didn't get to see it. I was like cracked, upset. Yeah, it was, honestly, it was a really hard blow. Let me just quickly catch up with the chat, guys. 2 centimeters is worrying. Yeah. But, we were talking about it later with one of our Greek friends, and he was saying, well, to be honest, this is so unusual for Athens that in many ways, people just assume it's going to happen once a year. It's not worth investing in infrastructure or whatever. You just accept that it's like a snow day. You just forget it. And then you just carry on as normal the following day. I'm not saying that I agree with it. I think I can see the logic, but yes, Polly, I completely agree. I thought it was really cool, though, that in what they perceive to be a case of national emergency, they would get these alerts. And I know other places like Japan, for example, get them, but they are silent. It will still take over your phone, but it will not give you a heart attack. So I thought that was useful because, it will impact a lot of people, for example, on the way to work or things like that. But maybe they could manage it in a way that was, a bit less intrusive. Do they have any lifts in museums? Yeah, well, this museum, Deborah, was very well equipped. So they did have lifts in the majority of them, but in some others, they didn't. In the archaeological sites, for example, there are serious problems of accessibility, and that's something I actually want to talk about. Hey, Maud, how are you doing? Welcome, Nooni. Thank you so much for joining us. That's it. Hey, yeah, they're not getting the Elgin. Do you know what, John? It was actually that very same day, and I never thought I would say this, guys. Hi, Emily. Hi, Sharon. I never thought I would say this. I was always like, I've always been a big supporter that every single country deserves to have their own heritage in their heritage. It's your history. It belongs to you. People should be able to access it in your country. And particularly if there are important pieces for the sake of tourism, that's, opportunities that belong to those people. After I saw what they were doing there, and not just that, how some statues were being preserved in the courtyard were pigeons. I actually posted this. If some of you follow me on social media, you may have seen it. Pigeons were nesting and doing other things on top of, statues from the 5th century BC and things like that. I was like, okay, then I understand why the friezes of the Parthenon are in the British Museum, which is something I never thought I would say in my life. I was seriously very upset that day. Very, very upset. Oh, Polly, thank you. But honestly, that was such a shock to me as a tour guide, as a historian, and as a tourist. It just seemed so strange. So strange. Has anyone else lost the sound? Or is it just Joy? Please let me know if you can still hear me. And if not, Joy, try to refresh. Joy, we've had lots of issues with the app today, so it could be the app itself. It's been quite problematic, so just give it a go. I'm very sorry about this. It's been affecting a few tours. Thank you so much, guys, for letting me know, and thank you, James, for the tip. It's very kind of you. So that day, I was particularly sad. I was also even more sad because the previous day, and now I'll start showing you pictures, I was already like, what the hell is happening in this town? So let me bring up the picture archive. Which day is gonna be best? Oh yes, let's start with the outrage at the Temple of Zeus. I was so mad at that. Hey Sam, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us. Right, so these are some of the pictures that I took. Let me see if I can find what I have. Oh yes. So first things first, we are casually walking around the area of Zapeion. I actually have a pre-recorded tour where I'm going to show you these guys. Hey Ronnie, welcome. How are you? And we find this lovely mosaic just there, hanging. Admittedly, the area is not something that you can, access in full, but it was covered in dirt. It was covered in rust. The degree of preservation is actually quite good. If I zoom into it, this is something that is definitely worthy of museum. I understand that there probably is 1,000 others, but James was particularly shocked that this was just hanging out on the side of a street. But that was not the absolute outrage. The absolute outrage is when we get to Hadrian's Arch, which is lovely, by the way. You see me there with the obligatory selfie I needed to take, so my mom knew that I was indeed in Athens, and those pictures were not being taken by someone else. And right next to Hadrian's Arch is the area of the Olympeion. I'll show you in a map so you can understand the area that we are talking about. So, right, let's zoom in. So I was staying in this area over here, in this neighborhood, just by the foot of Mount Lycabettus, which was actually very nice. This is the area of Kolonaki, which is actually quite a posh part of town from what I understand. Lots of like designer shops and things like that. The people definitely seemed a bit on the wealthy side of things. But I was on the top end of the neighborhood where things looked a bit more working class and a lot closer to the university. So the demographic was a bit different. Now from here to Mount Lycabettus, it was a very easy 30-minute walk, which was very nice. And from here to here, which is where the Temple of Zeus was, it was literally nothing, 30 minutes. Well, you see this little preview that you guys are seeing now on Google is better than actually seeing it in real life right now. I was so shocked because this is the expectation. Let me show you the reality, because you're gonna be gagged. All of this covered in construction, all of that covered in construction as well. You could literally see the one pillar, and they were still charging full price for the season for that. I was like, are you kidding me? There is literally nothing else to see in here. Nothing else. There is barely 4 explanation panels, and that's it. At this moment in time is when James and I realized that the upkeep, and not just upkeep, the approach to how these sites were presented to the public was not just very last century, is very 19th century even. It was so concerning that one of the largest temples in the devotion of Zeus of the ancient world was just kind of left like that. That was it. No way to know whether it was repaired beforehand either. No. This is something that happened everywhere we went. The information for this site specifically online was atrocious. I invite you guys to visit this website. I will not do it for you because it honestly breaks my heart every time I do it. Now, the vast majority of the archaeological sites in Athens, which is the Acropolis, the Agora, the Roman Forum, Hadrian's Library, the Kerameikos, the Lyceum of Aristotle, and the Temple of Zeus, are all under the care of the Greek government. As a result, you can get a combined ticket. You can visit them all. The price, hold your horses, okay? Because this is where the real kicker comes in. If you just want to visit the Acropolis, it's 20 euros. If you want to visit the Acropolis and all of the other sites, it's 30 euros, which you think, okay, that's a fair price for a pack, but 20 euros for the Acropolis. Well, I'll tell you what happened when we got to the Acropolis. But this is already something that put us in alarm. The majority of the things we could, or that we may have wanted to see here, you could literally see from the fence. This photo is taken from the fence. Like I didn't need to go inside to take that. I didn't even bother taking any others because I was honestly so upset at that moment in time. But it already kind of raised some alarms. And then we went to the Acropolis the following day. Let the pictures load in for a moment, and let me just catch up to the tour. I'm sorry you couldn't see. Honestly, Deborah, is one of those things. Is it worth bringing the matter up? Well, when we talked to several people, Deborah, in the local area, they kind of told us that they didn't even know, that they were not surprised we didn't know, because they didn't even know when half of these things were open. So I think they are aware. I don't know why this is managed this way. Now, of course, as I'm sure you all know, Greece still is recovering for, the different financial hardships that it's gone through. So it's easy to understand that maybe the cultural agenda isn't necessarily on the highest priority. But a country that primarily lives through tourism, you would think they would think about this twice. And the main issue that we have here, though, is that the majority of tourists that go to Greece do it through mass tourism. And as you guys know, I have a serious problem with mass tourism. Most of the tour guides that we have here on Heygo will tell you the same, because mass tourism means, hordes of people aimlessly going through a city without paying any mind, without really engaging with the culture, and just literally paying to take a picture of the Parthenon and then moving on. What that causes is a domino effect, because the local authorities assume that people are going to come no matter what for that picture, and therefore they don't necessarily feel the need to invest. As they don't feel the need to invest, the site remains the same for everyone. And that makes things, quite irritating. So here is another picture that I took from the outside. This is a very lovely view, by the way, of the Roman Forum with the Acropolis at the top. Hi, Sue, by the way. Thank you so much for joining, Shelley. So, it's one of those things. Even from the fence, I could already see everything that I wanted to see in the Forum. The Tower of the Winds, which is that beautiful structure there, it's completely visual from the outside. So there is also not really an incentive for the tourist who wants to come here. So if you do what we did and you buy the combined ticket and you go to see the Acropolis, like in comparison, the amount of people they were going up to see the Acropolis and then coming down here to see any of these sites, it was minimal. If it's 10 to 20%, that would still be a lot, frankly. So, it's one of those things. It seems like COVID had honestly, it is one of those things. Like, I understand the scaffolding needs to happen, obviously, for maintenance. I'm not against preserving culture. Please don't misunderstand me. But what I'm against is of, having a site that is obviously not in its greatest state of repair, operating as if it was a normal day, or not putting any of this information in a place where those visitors can actually access and plan their visits. I think that is, a bit unfair to visitors, and not just to visitors, to locals, because the locals end up finding out simply by chance. And at the end of the day, that's their culture. They need to know these things. So, it plays both ways. And yes, Greece was severely destroyed during the Second World War, in case you guys don't know it. The Historical Museum actually does a pretty good job at explaining the destruction during the War of Independence, and then the Reconstruction, and then how everything gets mistreated after the Second World War. So, I 100% understand the challenges. I think, though, that despite understanding the challenges, the attitude about it is what is disappointing, not the issues. The issues obviously are rooted in actual things. What was disappointing was the attitude, like that. Oh, well, since it was snowing, we didn't open half of the museum because whatever to the tourists. And you don't let the tourists know. That just seems unnecessary. There was a general attitude of whatever, if you see what I mean. And that's really what made the experience a bit sour. And yes, Turkey is in a very similar state. Hey, Rick, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us. So we went obviously to the Acropolis because it had to be done, prove that I was there, right on the steps. As you can see, it was not a fake, it was real. Now, the Acropolis was super hard to see. And here is what I will give you James's point of view, which he specifically asked me to do for this perspective. Now, being able to go to the Acropolis, which is, that place of the ancient world, for someone like James, who is an ancient historian, or for someone who cares about these things, obviously has a sentimental value that you cannot really put a price on it. I still think that 20 euros to see this version of the Parthenon, which, as you can see, is not in its best way, and I'm sure you can see the crane where it's actually being fixed, and two other temples, one of which you cannot access because the temple of Athena Nike is not something that is open to the public, or at least it wasn't open to the public now. I think it's still a bit excessive. So there is the sentimental value, of course. But at the end of the day, once again, the closest you're going to get to the Parthenon is kind of like to the stones in Stonehenge. The amount of information, once again, at hand in sight is so poor. I had to look out for a sign trying to tell me what the Parthenon was. And I'm a historian, guys. I know what I'm looking at. Imagine for the hordes of tourists that come here that just know that this is a very old temple. That to me is a missed opportunity to educate people, to understand why they've paid 20 euros to do this, why those 20 euros are helping the preserve. Do you know what I mean? It's so inconsequential. There is no desire, it seems, to actually engage. And from the other hand, from the point of view of tourism and doing business, it didn't seem to be very well organized, because the only guides that we actually saw on sites were private tour guides. This is all managed by the Greek government. Why don't you have the opportunity to then go there and, okay, fine, we don't have explanation panels, but for an extra 5 euros, you get a tour of the Acropolis at this time, and at this time. And you make actual money that is then supplying your tour guides and that is educating the public and keeping the site alive. It didn't even work that way. It honestly was, to me, both as a historian and as tour guide, it was honestly painful. Now, it was obviously lovely to see this. This is the temple, the Directheion. This is the temple of the Kariatids, and it was lovely. But I kind of felt like I had just gone up the hill, paid 20 quid to take a few pictures of things that, frankly, you can't see on the internet on a good documentary. Because again, this is taken with zoom. Okay, in my camera, this is probably two notches into the zoom. It's not like I could get close to it. And as you may know, the majority of the Kariatids that are actually here are not the original ones. They are reproductions that were put there for preservation. There is one in the British Museum, and a few of the others are actually in Athens itself, in different museums, in the Acropolis Museum and in the National Museum. But it was that surreal moment of, what am I actually seeing here? What is the context? Everything was completely lost in that sense. I'm just going to catch up with the chat quickly. Yeah, exactly. COVID did have a very nasty impact everywhere for sure. And well, KG, the reason why I'm doing this is, so that everyone understands. Now, there is one big, I'm just going to turn the camera quickly for this. There is one big thing you guys need to understand, which is that even though Athens was full of people, or at least my perception of full of people, for someone who is used to London, let's say, to them, this is low season. In literally less than 10 days, their high season starts. In high season, the volume of the people that was walking around the city doubles, triples, etc. The prices for everything that has to do with tourism go up. Half of the museums that I went in had a reduced price because it was winter. So instead of paying 10 euros, maybe I was paying 5. So imagine, the profit, the intentional profit that is done on this behalf from tourism is bonkers. It is definitely encouraging bad behaviors that are only going to hurt the Greek economy and Greek culture in the long term. But we are so caught up in this trap of mass tourism that sometimes it's really hard to leave it. So overall, we found that the best experiences that we had from a cultural perspective were from private collections. Those tend to keep the same prices all year round, more or less. The displays are different. The way of engaging with the public is different. So it was kind of a big shock between something run by the state and something run privately. Particularly if I compare it to my two main points of reference, right, which are the UK and Spain. In the UK, a museum that is run by the state, maybe a little bit underfunded, maybe, but normally there is not such a huge difference. Obviously, the work that we have here in museum work and conservation is, pioneer in many ways, and often profiting from other cultures, which is something we need to keep in mind. But in Spain, which to me is a secondary, tertiary country in Europe, still trying to recover, I wouldn't see this happening. This would not be happening. If I compare a state monument, like, I don't know, something in Andalusia, something UNESCO, like the Alhambra, for example, with some of the other smaller monuments that you have in Granada, the price difference, the accessibility of information, etc., there is not such a big disparity. So it really, really threw me off, because I thought it would be similar, but it really isn't. Now, we need to keep in mind that Athens is also a capital, so it's not representative of the whole of Greece, but I will get to that in a second, because actually, as soon as I got out of Athens, things looked up. So let me catch up with the chat, and I'll tell you more about that. The crane has been there for years. Well, there you go. They do, John, they do student prices, and they do some reductions. Like, for example, in many places when my sister arrived, so I had the week with James, then I had 2 weeks of my own where I was mostly working, and then my sister and my dad arrived. My sister, under 25, she didn't pay in at least 3 or 4 museums, which was really good. But that's not special. That happens in many places around the world. So, and what was considered a student was very specific in different places. There was not like a generic, category. So things like that could be different. Pythagoras would be turning his grave. Yeah. I hope you toured the ancient Greek agora. I'm about to show that, Jeff, actually. To me, the Agora was probably the nicest of the archaeological sites that is definitely worth paying to go inside. I'll get onto the pictures just now. Hey, Joydel, welcome. Hope you're doing good. And yes, Polly, the corruption definitely is hard. When I visited in, yes, 10 euros to see Acropolis. We'll see the inflation. 23 years later, impact. Our tour guide, Ginny, she was there in 1973, and it was free. I wouldn't expect to see the Acropolis for free, for sure. But for 20 euros that I'm paying, a few more panels, or at least, you know what I mean? Something, even if it's just a leaflet that you give people with the ticket, would definitely be worthwhile. Hey, Lottie, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. I was told by archaeologists, yes, honestly, and I'll show you now in the map why it is underwhelming. And yeah, I know, Ronnie, it's honestly one of those things that for sure happened. So let me go into the map quickly, and I'll explain you why I think race is 100% correct, and why I think out of all of these sites, the Agora to me is the best thing to visit if you're going. So the city center of Athens is huge, but in terms of the historical side of Athens, it's all located between Mount Lycabettus and Mount Philopappus here. So that's it. This is the neighborhood of Plaka over here, which is where you have the access to the Acropolis and some of the other sites. And then here in the area of Monasteraki, you have the Agora, the Roman Forum, the Hadrian's Library, and that type of stuff. So here is where everything is condensed. I did this walk from the base of Lycabettus to the base of Philopappus almost every other day. I appreciate I have a pretty fast pace. When I was walking with my dad and my sister, we were pretty relaxed. It took us no more than 45 minutes to go from one end to the other. Everything, quote unquote, worth seeing in Athens is in a radius of an hour. My dad and my sister were in Athens for literally 5 days. Out of those 5 days, we spent 2 days out of Athens, and they still saw everything that was worth seeing, and some of those things twice. So it's one of those things. So in my opinion, the best thing about going to Athens is seeing the museums. I'll show you the Agora because I think it's definitely something worthwhile. But the best thing about going to Athens is seeing the museums, because the city is plagued with museums, which are great museums. But since they are all managed individually, there is no one big pass, so it's expensive to get into them. However, some of those museums are absolute gold. So let me find first a quick picture of the Agora and why I think it's definitely worthwhile. And then I'll show you some other bits. So this is, for example, the reconstructed Stoa, which is where they have the Agora Museum of Athens, which is really nice. And inside they have actually some very lovely finds, like this funerary urn, which is still one of my favorite things that I saw in Athens. Walking from your hotel to, yes, by Benaki, and exactly. And I'm about to talk about Benaki Museum because it's definitely one of my top experiences there. I've been to Syntagma Square. Yes, the parks and the shopping, like from the point of view of a city that is functional and vibrant, I can't condemn it at all. You can find anything else that you want. There is so many places to eat. You're going to eat so good in Athens. You can buy anything that you want in Athens. But if you're looking for culture, you better spend money into accessing those museums. That's it. Now, this is one of the views that I got from the Agora. Amazing. Look at that. I mean, who wouldn't want to be in this space, particularly on the day that I was there, which was beautiful, to enjoy these views and to appreciate the historical context of the city? The Agora, 100% worthwhile. And in the Agora, there is something that I particularly valued a lot more, which was the ability to see this temple. So if you guys want to actually see a proper Greek temple, don't go to the Acropolis. Go to the Agora and see this. This is the temple of Hephaestus, which is actually one of the best preserved Greek temples in the whole of Greece, period. There is a picture that I have of the inside where you can see some of the friezes that are still in there. It's absolutely lovely. It's not as big as the Parthenon, but it's 3 times better preserved there. They used to be, Nota was great. I don't know what happened to her or why she decided to stop doing this, frankly. I wonder if part of that was some of the logistic issues. I don't know. But yeah, yes, it became a Christian church. Well, the Parthenon was also a church for a little while and a place for prayers. But the Temple of Hephaestus is just honestly one of the coolest things I saw, which to me meant a lot. Well, now onto the museums. I don't think it was the same day, was it? No, this day we ended up in Philopappus. Now I finally have my tour of Philopappus up as a pre-recorded, but look at those views. I just fell in love with these views. 100% hands down, my favorite thing about all of Athens was going to Mount Philopappus, which is all free, see the site of the Pnyx, which is where the Athenian democracy had their councils, seeing the monument of Philopappus, and seeing the views of the whole town. Honestly, seeing the expanse of the seventh largest city in Europe from the top of a hill and just seeing urbanized, mountain, sea, that was a really cool experience. To me, this was super, super special. And there is a lot of other little historical sites that really add a lot of value to this. So I like I said, I do have an actual tour that is coming in a couple of weeks for this that was pre-recorded. Because every time I actually try to go up there, since there is no cover, as soon as the wind comes out, the signal just goes. It's completely gone. Yes, that is exactly Piraeus, Piraeus is the place where we went to, and we were unable to see anything because it was all closed down, and actually quite hard to get around. Frankly, that was something that put us a little bit off. Let me show you my favorite part of the Benaki Museum, which I think is on the 5th. I'm struggling to recall. Well, one thing that I loved about walking around Athens is that you had one of these bakeries almost in every corner. The smell every time you left the house at around 9 a.m. My goodness. I literally could have come waiting 3 times my size if I wanted to. Honestly, the food in Athens, particularly the pastries and the sweets, absolutely amazing. Well, the vast majority of the sites in Piraeus were closed because of the snow. And because of the snow, the vast majority of public transport around Piraeus wasn't working. So it was actually quite hard getting there and walking around there. It's quite a large area, a lot larger than the map kind of makes you realize. And the problem as well that you have with Google Maps in Athens, Google Maps itself says that its accuracy is not often 100%. So sometimes it's really deceiving, and it tells you can walk to somewhere when in reality, yes, you can physically walk there, but it's not an easy road or something that you really should be doing for the sake of safety or whatever. Honestly, KG, it was so good. I ate so much. so much. Right. Let me see. Where are we? Is this the Benaki? No, this is the historical museum, which was the old parliament. Absolutely lovely, great building that preserves a historical function with a lovely exhibition explaining the Greek War of Revolution and general Greek history, past, ancient stuff. Really cool. Yeah. Well, Polly, it doesn't seem to have changed all that much since 76. My impression is that in the summer, when the cruise ships are around and whatnot, transport around there is a lot more accessible. But the easiest option for me that day would have been just grabbing a cab. And I ended up having to use Uber a lot. Honestly, Uber saved my life a couple of times when I was in Athens, because getting to some places was actually quite challenging. Hey, Mark, thank you so much for joining. Hope you're doing good. Right, so in which case, the Benaki Museum must have been on the 6th of Feb. As you can see, this is my organization of when the pictures happened. I may be losing... yes, here we are. Behold, the Benaki Museum. This entire preserved room of a typical 18th century house, I believe this was. I was literally like, I wanted to live in this museum. I didn't want to go home. They also had a rooftop bar. Honestly, it was beautiful. This, to me, an absolute highlight. My favorite part of the Benaki Museum, I actually Uber wasn't too bad, Deborah. It was cheaper than an ordinary taxi. The islands were famous. Yeah. Well, this is the other thing. I met several people when I went to Delphi, which I'll show you in a moment. I met several people who had been in some of the Greek islands, in Santorini, in Naxos, and whatnot, and then coming back to Athens, and they were like, everything was closed. There was nothing you could do because the locals were not bothered by tourists this time of the year. But yeah, the subway was very good, Jeff. But the problem is that the subway has an issue after a certain stage. So it's very useful to go to the airport, very useful to go through the city center, and very useful to go to a specific area of Piraeus, which is normally the sort of area for the docking for the cruise ships. As soon as you move away from that, you very much rely on the buses. I personally found the buses to be a bit tricky. I suspect that once you've done it several times, it's absolutely fine. But I found the buses to be quite tricky personally. And the tram had quite a strange timetable, which made it a bit, hard to actually make it functional. Now, this is my favorite thing I saw in the Benaki Museum, hands down one of my favorite things of the whole trip. These ship earrings, enamel ship earrings in perfect state of preservation. Oh my God, I could have died all over. They were beautiful. The majority of these were Greek, except one, which is actually Spanish. I'll show you in just one moment. Again, this is all in the Benaki Museum. Absolutely 100% worthwhile. This one was the Spanish one. It has people in them. I had never seen anything like this in my whole life, guys. I was so chuffed when I found this. The entire museum overall, 100%, 10 out of 10, but 100% worth just for this. It was such an experience. And I mean, as you can see, I took pictures of anything and everything that I found. There was this beautiful entombment painted of El Greco, which is all covered behind glass. And I'm sure the reflection doesn't do it any justice, but to me, it was super special to be able to see it. Honestly, Deborah, I was like, wow, a human being did that 500 years ago? That's amazing. Yeah. What a wait. Do you think anyone actually wore them? I think they actually did, Polly. It seems to me that they were for special occasions, like from what I read in the museum itself. So I don't think it was for day-to-day wear. So I suspect, for a couple of hours, you could probably get away with wearing those. The textiles that they had from the Byzantine period were also amazing. Like, honestly, I was really blown away with this collection. And like I said, other than the bad experience that we had in the Archaeological Museum, which is a real shame, the majority of the museums that I visited in Athens were superb. Let me show you something from a different date. What is this? This is the day James was leaving, so we didn't actually visit a museum, so that's not going to be any use. The National Gallery. I had so much fun in the National Gallery of Athens. Absolutely amazing. Really, really cool. I learned so much about art. You guys know I'm an absolute art job. It's something that fascinates me. I saw so many things. I was well educated. The explanation panels were pretty good. They did have tour guides. I had never seen anything like this before. I thought this was so beautiful. And I'm normally not taken by 20th century art, but I was like, wow, amazing. I wish I would have learned more about this before. But the one that completely did it for me, let me see if I can find it, was one particular artist that just really blew my mind. They had a huge collection of him. Nikolaos Gysis. This is the beckoning. This type of stuff. I was like, this is amazing. This is all 19th century art, by the way. Really, really cool. I was really, really blown away by the sheer collection there in the art gallery. So I 100% recommend the art gallery for sure. And there was a queue to enter the art gallery when I went there. Really, really surprising. And a long queue, not just, a couple of people. It went round and round. The War Museum is really good as well. For example, you get to see all sorts of stuff. I'm not very much into warfare, as many of you know, but honestly, as much as a lot of the information was not easily available in English, I was really surprised by the quality of the displays. And particularly with the ancient part of history, they did something so amazing. Let me see if I have actually, they did this little, well, not so little, these beautiful dioramas explaining how different battles had happened, which for people like me who are not all that much into specific battles, it makes it so much more accessible, like, to understand, oh, this is where this guy had his ships, and that's the reason why these people won or those people lost. It was actually very good from that perspective, really interactive. But the real cool thing happened when I actually left Athens and I went to other places. So I had the chance to go to Delphi, to Chalkis or Halkida, as it's called over there. And then we also went to Mycenae and to Nauplia. And all of those dates were definitely highlights for me. Delphi, the only problem is that it's quite far away from Athens. So I left my accommodation at 7:45 in the morning, and I didn't come back until 8:15. I only spent 2 hours in Delphi. So as you can see, that was an awful long day. Athens traffic coming in and out of the city was terrible. We literally spent more time in the bus, I'm sure, leaving the city than what I spent eating at the restaurant. So if you're gonna go, just be aware that it takes a while. Looks like an obsessive life work. Honestly, it kind of is, Polly, but they were really cool. These are some of the views that you encounter, by the way, on the road up to Delphi. This is the little village of Aracova. We didn't stop there because we ran out of time, but the views were definitely worthwhile. And I would like to actually go there and visit it. Did you see that? Yes, we did go to the Kerameikos, and we saw the main row with the funerary statues. This is the highlight of Delphi. I had a guide there, she was really, really good. This statue was the best thing ever. The charioteer of Delphi is something that I had really, really wanted to see my whole life. I saw it. This statue, I'll show you the one in the front. For those of you who don't know, this statue is super special because apart from the beautiful craftsmanship that you see in there, it still preserves the eyes. They are enamel. Let me see if you can get a better view of them from here. Maybe not, because the zoom is quite severe. But once you are actually in the room, it follows you. It looks like it's looking at you and it's following you. To me, but I'm an art nerd, but to me, that was honestly such a mind-blowing experience. And the quality of the exhibition in Delphi overall was so good. The site itself doesn't have a lot left. And actually, because it was low season, and this is something that kept on happening everywhere, a lot of parts of the site were not open. We couldn't see the tholos, and we couldn't see parts of the athletic facilities. But despite that, and despite the museum being quite small, there were beautiful, well-curated, well-presented pieces of sculpture, like this representation of the three graces. And, for example, the bull made entirely out of metal. This is the head of it. The full body is here. I had never seen anything like this in my life, guys. That was 100% worth the time and money. And entrance to the site of Delphi and the museum is only €6. So really what you're paying for when you go on one of these trips is for the transport, because it's so far away. And it genuinely takes a car or a bus to take you there. Trains in Greece are not very well. Well, I'm sure you all have heard of the huge accident that happened literally the day before I was coming back. And that actually explains so many things for us. I think we kind of realized there and then how lucky we had been with our train journey and why it seems so hard to actually get anywhere by train. Thank you so much, Ronnie, by the way. It's very kind. But yes, it was, well, this of course is a classic Delphi, the Sphinx, 100% worth seeing. And then just a couple of the best image that I have of the actual archaeological site is this. I mean, the views are absolutely spectacular. Let me just center you a bit better. But as you can see, again, there isn't a lot left other than the pillars at the top of the temple and part of the processionary route. So again, just keep in mind that in a lot of these places, what is left in terms of archaeology isn't a lot. I say that, but then I had like I said, the lovely opportunity to go with my dad and my sister to Halkida and to Mycenae and Nobflia. In Halkida, we encountered the carnival, which was it's the reason why I have this silly picture with a clown, which is is quite cool. But never mind, we didn't expect that to be there. It was such a lovely town, so beautiful. The views were honestly breathtaking. The trip here by train was quite surprising. It only took us 1 hour from Athens. Return for the three of us was 28 euros, so very accessible. And the route the train does here goes almost next to the water, so it's honestly very breathtaking. After knowing how things are, I'm not sure if I would do it again. That definitely put a little bit of scare on me, but it was definitely something worth doing. The museum in Halkida was very good. The archaeological museum there had a lot of mosaics from different time periods, a very good modern display. Honestly, very big surprise. And it is in a modern in a modern building. It's a factory that is no longer in use, so they are using the archaeological background of it to now display this exhibition. I mean, look at this mosaic, which is absolutely breathtaking. I was honestly very surprised by Chalkis in many ways, and we had a really good time. I'm sure you've seen a couple of pictures scrolling. Here we are me and my sister in the fortress of Karababa. The wind was so fierce, we were trying to take pictures together, and it was quite hard. Thank you, Polly, you're very kind. But it was, Chalkis was a small, quiet town, definitely worth visiting. But the big mind blown was the 28th of Feb when we went to Mycenae and Naupflio. We actually went there by car, which was actually pretty easy. My dad was the one that drove. I know nothing about cars or driving, guys, so I can't really judge. But my dad said driving around Athens was a nightmare. As soon as we got out of Athens, although there were still, nasty people on the road, it was a lot more manageable. You can't really get to Mycenae unless you drive. You can get to Corinth, but not really any farther down than that, or at least not down that way. You can go over to Olympia. Mycenae is 100% worth the money. This was honestly one of my favorite places. This is a tomb from like the 14th century before Christ. I could not believe the wonderful state of repair that everything was on, and well, the impact of the visit. This is the famous Gate of the Lions. That is the oldest monumental sculpture group in Europe and almost in the whole world. I was so taken away by Mycenae. If you guys go and you want to see it, honestly, do it. On top of that, like the archaeological site is really cool, but the views are lovely. You're in the middle of the countryside. It was really nice. And although it was a bit cold for us that day, it was still very much worth the while. And there is so much to see. On top of that, this was quite interesting. As we were walking around Mycenae, we realized several people collecting rubbish, trimming the trees, clearing the pathways. So it was so strange that we didn't see anything like that in Athens, but we did in Mycenae. And it kind of made us maybe think that, some archaeological places perhaps are taken better care than others for whatever reason. It was quite interesting. Local people seem much more, it's 100%. The boat to we drove to Naupflio because it was just 20 minutes extra to Mycenae, and it only cost us 40 euros for the day to rent a car from Athens to Naupflio, free mileage, full insurance. So it was pretty good. Total drive from Athens to Mycenae was about 1 hour and 15 minutes and another 20 minutes to Naupflio. So for us, it was definitely worth the while. And my favorite thing, I love this picture because I kind of feel like Indiana Jones. So I'm sorry for the silly reference, but this was going inside the Tholos tomb, which is perfectly preserved. And I was like, this is like Temple of Doom. I could just almost imagine the scene in my head, Kalima, Kalima. It was really cool. And the inside of the actual tomb is this, like, it was breathtaking. I was so in awe. Mycenae is definitely one of the highlights for the trip for me. And I'm so lucky that I had my family there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to go. I definitely didn't really have the budget to go by boat in this case. And well, by bus, it would have been a lot more money. And then we got to Napflio. Napflio, guys, is such a beautiful place. Just look at this. In the middle of February, this was gorgeous. I can only imagine how beautiful this must be at sunset on like midsummer, honestly. I've been to Delphi and Olympus. Yes, the cypress trees and the olives and the laurels, honestly, the smells are just so beautiful. Napflio, 100% straight to our heart. My sister kept on saying, I kept here particularly, she was like, I'm getting such Mamma Mia vibes. Keep in mind, my sister is 20 years old. So maybe her expectations and ways of experiencing culture are a bit different, but it honestly kind of gave that kind of Hollywood ideal Mediterranean life vibe, which was really lovely. Hi Michael, thank you so much for joining us. I have a couple of pictures here of the view from the top of the fortress, of the Venetian fortress. It was just nice. As you can see, we had a little bit of fog in there, but honestly, 100% worth the money and the visit. And we ate really well in Napoli as well, and relatively cheaply. This is something that I can quite happily say about Greece. I didn't overspend money anywhere I ate. And in fact, I found this quite surprising. When I went shopping, because I was there for a whole month, so I obviously made use of the supermarkets. I found it, in terms of the amount of time that it was going to take me and run things and whatnot, I found it cheaper or equally comparable to go and eat meat and fish outside to a restaurant than taking it home and cooking it there. So the prices of things were genuinely very affordable to eat very good quality food in that sense. This was another view with the other fortress there in the sea. Honestly, really, really lovely. And we got really lucky and we caught the sunset. This was a specific place that I wanted to photograph because this is the place where the first head of state of Greece, of Ioannis Kapodistrias, actually got killed and assassinated in there. So I wanted to see this. And even the general streets of this town were just so cute. Honestly, Greek jewelry. I actually bought jewelry. So much jewelry in Athens is actually beautiful and very well crafted. I bought a beautiful ring. I normally, you guys know, I'll just change the camera for a moment. I have tiny hands. Like finding rings that fit me is hard and normally very expensive. I could have come back with coffers full of jewelry, clothes, and leather goods. It was amazing. It was like a riot. A bit overwhelming sometimes because there was so much of it. You were like, I kind of want it all and I don't know what to have. But anyway, let me show you the last few pictures of Napflio. But that comment, Deborah, the jewelry trip, it was just surreal, honestly. This was such a beautiful sunset, guys. The sea was beautiful, the sun, everything. Like I said, I can only imagine in the summer, this must be amazing. They are really good artisans. And actually, I found that the people from the commerces, people from the shop were actually quite friendly and approachable. In some places, they were a bit pushy. Like you could tell there is a lot of competition, but they were actually quite nice. Like, look at this. How lovely was that? I honestly, this is the curated version. I took God knows how many pictures of this golden hour moment. It was insane. We everyone was out there with their phones, with their cameras, and of course enjoying the time of the day. It was rather lovely, frankly. I still have, well, honestly, the woman in the jewelry shop where I bought some of my stuff, she told me, as long as you keep it clean and you take good care of it, it will be something you'll have for life. And I was like, if it lasts at least 5 years, it would have been worth the money. I don't think I paid more than 10 euros for a sterling silver ring that fit my ring perfectly. It was honestly really mind-blowing. But yes, so this is Nauplia. This is one of the many selfies that I took so that my mom again would know that we were all there. My mom likes this. I like taking pictures of buildings and things that are happening where I go to a place. My mom likes seeing someone's face, so she knows you were there. So we always have to create these completely fabricated moments to satisfy her and make her be at ease. But yeah, we had this lovely time, and completely as an absolute funny commentary, cats. If you guys love cats, you're gonna love Greece. There were cats everywhere, so many cats. My sister has a natural gift for animals. Everywhere we went, a stray cat will sit on her lap. Some of these stray cats are actually very well taken care of. Someone I was speaking with in Athens, I don't know if it would be the case everywhere else, but someone I was speaking with in Athens told me that they actually fed the cats and kind of treated them as if it was theirs without them necessarily being theirs, because it was A, good for business, and B, good for keeping pests, I suspect potentially rodents, at bay. And that makes sense. We know that Athens has had problems with rodents a few times throughout its lifetime. So I wonder if maybe there is something about that. But in general, there is quite a lot of stray cats in there, which becomes quite funny. One of the few nights James and I ate out, we were actually sitting in a restaurant, which was lovely, Myandros, nearby the library of Hadrian, and a little cat. They're like little street urchins, kind of like Dickensian type of scenario. Please, sir, can I have some more? They will come to you. You would be happily eating your meal, and they will actually pester you, harass you to get food. It was like they know exactly what they're doing. They're professional swindlers, and they will have you like under their spell any moment. I kept on telling James, don't feed the cat. If you feed the cat's never gonna leave. And James loves cats, like you, Deborah. James loves them. So there he was. Suddenly, a huge piece of pita bread had accidentally fallen onto the floor, and I was like, "Oh well, here we go." But it was quite funny. But honestly, one last view of Napflio, because I really love this picture. I thought this was such a lovely moment. So, like I said, there were really cool things that happened while I was in Greece. There are definitely good moments. But there were also things that, caught me by surprise or left an unsavory taste in my mouth. Actually, I'll tell you something, and I'm telling you this for the sake of being 100% transparent and crystal clear. I'll turn the zoom out and I'm coming through. One of the recordings that I have for you guys that I did on the last day, it nearly ended up in a punch-up. I've been actually harassed verbally and physically at least 3 times in my 1 month being in Athens. It actually made me feel quite unsafe as a solo traveler. I appreciate I'm quite a small woman, and often that makes me a target. I don't shy away from things like this. Like, that type of stuff normally doesn't bother me, but I actually found it really hard. There were certain behaviors and certain attitudes. I don't know if I just got really unlucky. Maybe I did. But it was almost every other day I went out to do something, whether I was working or whether it was for pleasure, that I was like, seriously? Like, what the hell? I hadn't had situations like that in either the UK or Spain. And Spain is an incredibly sexist country still. And it actually made me feel really uncomfortable. On top of that, even when I was with James, a couple of the nights that we were walking around, still in the city center, but perhaps some of the neighborhoods that were not necessarily touristic, there were some scenes that were quite graphic that we didn't expect to see in the city center. Like, I'm quite used to London, which is a big city where obviously crime happens like everywhere else, and drugs and theft. I'm not suggesting these things don't happen in the rest of the world, but it had been a really, really, really long time that walking around 7 p.m. on an ordinary day on a main street, I had seen someone doing heroin. That was a hard pill to swallow. And we had a few situations like that. So as a matter of fact, several of these situations made me so uncomfortable that after a certain time, I didn't like leaving the house on my own. My neighborhood, Kolonaki, and the area around Lycabettus was actually okay, and I felt pretty safe in the neighborhood. But transit through certain areas, not so much. And that actually made it really hard for me, because at a certain time of the day, I was like, and I'm locked in my house. Thank goodness for Netflix, because honestly, some days were really hard. And I will not show you, because it's frankly quite embarrassing. I don't know how I did it. I think it was just pure adrenaline. But if you get to see it, the tour that I did pre-recorded and that I'm showing in April of the city center, there is a moment in Hadrian's library where I am so shocked that the film actually came out good, because someone was behind me threatening me with a stick. And I'm literally like this, pointing with the gimbal to the things that I wanted you guys to see and holding to the fence for dear life. And I was like, are you for real? Like, I was ready to either lose my tape and the gimbal or run away, and God knows what happened. It was tight. James actually picked up the phone call when all of that happened afterwards, and he helped me calm down. I was in a real bad state that day. And when we actually see the tape, you hear exactly what happens. It's quite bizarre. But I've had nasty situations in Southampton as well, every so often, and I think some of us tour guides do in general, because you go with the gimbal, people maybe don't understand what you're doing, or maybe someone is drunk and they interfere. I'm not suggesting this doesn't happen anywhere else, but to the point of being threatened with a stick, the escalation was definitely unnecessary. And like I said, the constant harassment, particularly from men, it was honestly quite abrasive. And I can hold my ground quite quickly. The Spanishness comes through, and it leverages things really well, but it wasn't pleasant. So if I had to do it solo again, I would probably reconsider. Just quickly catching with the chat. I have harassing Robins now in my kitchen. My goodness, I was protected from the awful men by, well, yeah, I'm not surprised. It was something that honestly I kind of experienced it. It left a sour mouth, and then I moved on. But it was noticeable enough that it made me think, that isn't so nice, if you see what I mean. So I'm not letting it ruin it, but it definitely, yes, I remember Stefan had a problem too, and I remember you were in that tour, John. That was just, uncomfortable. She was like on my face and pushed me and whatnot. This guy, I honestly, I don't know. My entire thought, I don't know why I carried on recording. Actually, I know why I carried on recording. I think I thought, if something happens to me, then at least I have the tape rolling. So there you go. And because the adrenaline was going, I was just like, I'm going to carry on recording because I have tours to do, because I had to get home anyway. But it was honestly, it was quite scary in that sense. And the drug thing, I am perfectly aware that drugs happen, in neighborhoods of Southampton and in Winchester and in London and in everywhere else. But seeing it in what I consider to be normal times in a main road, so literally, like graphically, I was like, wow, okay, this is interesting. I just did not expect that. It really caught me by surprise. And it was quite sour from that perspective. And yes, I think in the case of Stefan, it was also drug related. So there we go. No, unfortunately, not just because of that, but in general, because of how mixed the experience was. And at the end of the day, I didn't really get what I wanted from it. And I know this is going to sound really bad, but in my mind, if I'm going to have to experience a society that still has a lot of challenges to overcome, which obviously every single society does, I'm not suggesting we don't have our own problems here. If I'm going to have to deal with some of those problems, which in some cases are similar enough to the problems that we have in Spain, I'll rather go back home where I can have an impact in my own culture rather than go somewhere where I already have a language barrier, for example. Not that it was really an issue, because everyone in Greece spoke perfect English, by the way. But at least from a psychological perspective, having the language barrier being removed and being treated like a local was, I would rather go back to Spain, if that makes sense, rather than to another place where I already know the stuff that interests me about history is just not all that well looked after for now, and where I'm going to encounter a lot of the similar problems. So definitely crossed out of the list, but I'm really glad I did it because I learned really new things. I had the opportunity to meet some really awesome people completely by chance. Like I said, the food was great. The museums were really cool, but in the overall balance, I think there were far too many buts and issues to make it a 100% cool experience. Like if I had to rate overall, like on a 5-star review, my time in Athens, I probably would give it a 3.5, which is still pretty good, but not good enough for me to do the same process again. Would I go again on holiday, maybe somewhere else? Yeah, I'll consider it. Would I go there for as long or everything else? Probably not. So that's my perspective on that. Yes, Ronnie, I honestly, I know exactly what you mean. It's something that unfortunately I have to deal with all the time. And for whatever reason, it just made me more of a target. And actually, I realized one day, and I know this probably sounds stupid to you guys, but there were days where I actually realized, and it took me several days to notice, that I was the only person walking around the city center that I had seen with natural blonde hair and green eyes. So sometimes I was wondering why people were looking at me like I was a weirdo. And then after several people stopped me and commented on my looks, I kind of looked around and, certain things kind of fall into place. But it was really strange having to become aware of, certain behaviors that I learned as a young adult to keep myself safe in a new country where I had, never been to, and have to develop that kind of again in another place where maybe I didn't expect to have to deal with that. But there you go. Greece was lovely, but I do feel exactly, Polly. I'm glad I went. I'm glad I had these experiences, but it's ticked off the list now, and we shall see. I see you in the south of France. I love Nice. Nice is a lovely city, so why not? But I am more of a northern girl, so if you see me in France, it will probably be in Normandy, because at the end of the day, the Normans are my friends. Nothing puts me off from moving to Greece. I love Greece. Well, that's good. Like I said, I appreciate that in many ways. It probably wouldn't have had my experiences, but at the same time, it's something that is worth seeing and something being aware of. Particularly, I think, in my case, I'm a small little girl traveling solo. I suspect I probably had more targets on me than many other people would. So, it's important. And there is also some other things that would be a benefit for people and for me not. 20 degrees in February is ridiculous. I don't want to even imagine the amount of people that I saw in the Acropolis that day at 40 degrees in the middle of August. No, thank you. That's an experience I can live without. But, that this is, like I said, this is my experience from my perspective. It's just one side of the coin, but I just think it's worth for you guys to know what could happen. Thank you so much, Hadrian. It's very kind of you. Well, I have the American continent overall very neglected, so I should really get out of Europe. That was my plan, but the pandemic kind of left me hanging. So in any case, that's that for today. Yeah, Italy. I've been to Italy a lot already. That's the thing. So it's one of those things. Next possible destinations. I don't know. I have several things in the bag. I'm not going to show all my cards just yet, but we're very likely to be seeing either Portugal or Malta this year. So beware. New places to discover probably in the autumn. I have a very, very hard season now from March until September. I'm pretty fully booked. So it will be from October onwards. And that's kind of that. Thank you so much, John. It's very kind. And I'll see you guys soon. I love Scotland. I've already been to Scotland. I would really love to move to Scotland, but since my entire purpose is moving out of the UK, if I could find a reason to stay in the UK, I would quite happily move to Glasgow, for example, not to Edinburgh. But the idea is finding somewhere else in Europe that fits with the criteria of what I'm looking for. So Malta, Portugal, probably something that will come soon. Well, I'm sorry, Emily. That's the plan, but we shall see. You never know. Life takes many turns. In any case, that's all for me now. I actually have to go and get my dinner because I haven't eaten since 2 p.m. So I'm going to go grab some dinner. I'm going to go to bed because tomorrow I have another long day. But thank you so much for sharing this with me, guys. I hope that it didn't necessarily scare you. That was not the point. The point was being just brutally honest about everything that I experienced from day one until the day I came back. So now that you have it, I hope you have a really lovely time. I'll see you hopefully maybe tomorrow if you are around for some tours. I'm back in Winchester showing some other things. And if not, throughout the week and the rest of March, like I said, the full timetable is out. So I'm sure I'll catch you guys at some other point. Have a lovely time. Thank you so much for your support and take care. Bye-bye.